So, welcome back to another episode of Off Air with Alex, an online series all about the off-air moments of your favorite journalists, politicians, media folks, celebrities, influencers, and today we're talking to someone who has quite an extensive knowledge and experience with politics, longtime GOP strategist, Mr. Jeffrey Lord. Jeffrey, thanks so much for being with us. I know you've got a lot of radio and TV hits most days. Thanks for taking some time out to talk with us.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me. This will be great.
It'll be fun. And we're actually neighbors, which I knew you were close to me in central Pennsylvania, but I didn't know how close.
Yeah, I am in technically, you know how this works. I have the Camp Hill mailing address,
Yes.
but I am technically in East Pennsboro Township.
I love that. Pennsylvania's odd. For those of you watching not in Pennsylvania, you cross a street or a stream here, a different district, a different borough, a different township. Anyway, let's get to how your day starts, Jeffrey. You've been in politics for forever. Talk to me about how a typical day for you starts now in the 21st century. You're still involved in politics a lot. How does a typical morning routine begin for you?
Well, first I wake up. Then once I've had sort of my morning routine and had breakfast, I don't eat much for breakfast because it puts me to sleep if I eat too heavily. So I just have a little juice and a little chocolate milk, Nestle's Quick there, and then get behind my desk and start. And at this point, I'm a contributing editor for the American Spectator. I write for Newsmax. I write for Newsbusters from the Media Research Center. Occasionally, I write for the Daily Caller. I just had a piece published over the weekend in the Washington Times. So basically, I sit down and see what's happening this morning in the world, and then pick a topic, and off I go, and then hit the send button. And I should also say, I now have my own website, The Jeffrey Lord, and my own podcast, The Word of the Lord. So I try and write every day, 5 days a week at least, for my website, and do at least one podcast a week, if not two.
I love that. So you're kind of up on the times and up on topics, and obviously you come from a Republican standpoint, I'm assuming most of the time. How do you determine what you're going to tackle, or is it the most eye-catching, controversial thing of the day, or is it sometimes something that maybe didn't get covered enough?
Whatever I think is newsworthy. And I should say as well that I do Newsmax TV. I occasionally do Fox. Today's column, for example, in the American Spectator, we've all been witness to the controversy surrounding Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York and his problems with nursing homes, et cetera. And he
with
has
the data being released.
Yes, and he has really been taken on by, of all people, Janice Dean, the weather person for Fox News. And I don't know Jan. I know my fair share of people at Fox, and I've been on Fox a lot, but I don't know Janice. I mean, needless to say, my weather prediction skills would be less than up to snuff. So I've never met her, but I was so taken with this, and in part because, for those who are unfamiliar, her parents-in-law, apparently lovely couple, were in a nursing home in New York State when Governor Cuomo introduced COVID patients into the nursing home. They both died as a result.
Wow.
And she was infuriated. I mean, at first her parents-in-law were on in age and all of this kind of thing. She didn't get it. Well, then it began to become crystal clear that he had inserted COVID patients into the nursing home and caused this, and not just for her, but for thousands of people. She, in a blink, went from being just Janice Dean, the weather machine, as they nickname her over there, to taking on Governor Cuomo and going after him on this. And just in the last few days, we now realize that Governor Cuomo was playing fast and loose with the facts. This has come out. This is news everywhere. Now you have even Democrats saying that he should resign or be impeached. I mean, it's pretty startling, but she was first on this. She didn't have to be. She did it. And I must say I had a great deal of sympathy for her, because in 2004, I had to come home from Washington, D.C., where I was working. I'm an only child, and it was apparent that my dad was coming down with Alzheimer's. So I became the caretaker, as the phrase goes. He passed in 2007, and then I was taking care of my mom, who was then 88. And she was, relatively okay at that point. But as time went on, she couldn't walk eventually. And then she started to slide into dementia. Well, at that point, I was working for CNN and running around America for the 2016 election cycle. So with the help of the visiting angels, I made sure that she was taken care of. And then I was here with her when she passed in 2018 at the ripe old age of 99.
Oh my
But
gosh! Wow.
I am very sympathetic and understand that there are millions of Americans out there who are struggling every day with aging parents and what to do. And I was just tremendously admiring of her. So I wrote, as a matter of fact, a column for today for the American Spectator, Janice Dean, Profile and Courage. And guess what? I heard from Janice Dean.
That's great. Well, it would. Go ahead.
Well, just so one of the things that I get to do in my writing is I get to determine what I'm going to write about and what the topic is. And in this case, again, the situation with Governor Cuomo was current. So you pick a topic that is topical, that everybody is talking about, and I sit here and very quietly do my research and then write up a piece and send it on.
And you kind of answered this, but I mean, how do you navigate the extremes of politics in 2021? It's been crazy over the last 10 years, not even just the last president, but for presidents, the last 2 or 3, it's been kind of crazy and back and forth between the parties. How did you navigate that when you were on CNN, or even before that, you started in like the Reagan White House? How do you navigate these crazy political people and situations? That would be overwhelming to me.
Well, I should tell you, Alex, that I've been around this literally my entire life. My parents were New Yorkers, high school sweethearts out there on Riverhead, Long Island. And then their romance was interrupted by that small little scuffle known as World War II.
Just that small thing, yeah.
Yeah. And Dad was shipped off to the Pacific, where he was for about 4.5 years. The Philippines, the Battle of Lehi. I got this eventually all on tape when he was still of sound mind and body. And it's quite fascinating to me still, because, World War II veterans, a lot of them are always reluctant to speak about what they saw. But, being his only child here, I was able to pry it out of him on videotape. So when he came back, they got married. They moved into New York City. They were in the tourist and travel business. And then in about 5 years, I was coming along, and they decided, I think the young couple wanted to spread their wings. So they didn't want to move home to Riverhead, where both sides of the family were. And they didn't want to raise a child in New York City. So they picked Northampton, Massachusetts, which, as I would tell my father, the Mets fan in later years, this is why it's his fault that I became a Red Sox fan.
Blame it on him.
Exactly. Well, in retrospect, in amazement to me, because these things generally take a while, they were not natives, right? They picked this town, they land there, but they get involved in politics. And my dad wins Calvin Coolidge's old seat on the Northampton, Massachusetts City Council.
Wow.
He becomes the Republican City Committee chairman. And my mother becomes the chairwoman of the Hampshire County Republican Women. Well, again, they're a young couple, and to cut expenses, instead of hiring babysitters all the time, they brought me with them. So there I was at a very young age, hanging out at Northampton City Council meetings, going to county Republican dinners and city Republican dinners, crawling underneath the table and meeting United States senators and governors of Massachusetts and all this kind of thing.
So you were mingling from an early age.
Yes. And this was not their intention to sort of pass it on to me. It's just, babysitting, I think, was the objective. Well, little did they know, I'm just absorbing this. I just really loved all this sort of stuff. So, of course, this is what I wanted to do when we wound up here in Pennsylvania. I went to Franklin Marshall College over in Lancaster. I was a government major. When I got out, I came back home here, got a job in the Pennsylvania State Senate for the Republican Communications Office. In 1976, at the ripe old age of 24, verging on 25, I ran for the Pennsylvania General Assembly.
What would you advise people who maybe want to get into politics in some capacity the way that you do it now? Is there a certain proven path?
Yeah, start at the grassroots level and work your way up. Learn the politics of your area and then expand out, your county, your state, national politics if it interests you. I mean, one of the things I've learned, ironically, uh, there I was as a candidate for the state legislature and working in the state Senate. But in fact, once I lost, I got a job offer to go to work in Washington as the press secretary for Congressman Bud Schuster. And I went and really got into national affairs as opposed to just state legislative things. And that's what really helped me along. And I sort of worked my way up the ladder. I was press secretary to Congressman Schuster, then his legislative director and his budget committee staff member. Then I was invited to go over to the U.S. Senate to work for Pennsylvania's then senior U.S. Senator John Hines as his executive assistant. And then fortuitously, a guy by the name of Drew Lewis, he had gone on to be President Reagan's first Secretary of Transportation, who was famous in the day for firing the air traffic controllers in August of 1981. He stayed about 2 years in the Reagan administration and went on to become chairman of what was then known as, it was a joint venture between Time Magazine and American Express that is now Time Warner.
Okay.
And he was the chairman and CEO, and I got to be his chief of staff. At the same time, he was also a co-manager of the Reagan-Bush re-election committee. So I was running back and forth between New York and Washington and making friends of all the top people in the Reagan campaign who really did become great friends. And when it was all over, there was some thought that Drew would be asked to be the White House chief of staff, but that did not occur. So he asked if I wanted to go. And of course, I said, yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. Where do I sign, right? I mean, that's a ton of hats you've worn. I mean, how do you, I guess, get all those opportunities? I guess they lead one to another.
That one leads to another. I mean, I think this is true with most people's lives. I mean, I could not possibly have planned that if my life depended on it.
Sure.
I focused on an immediate goal and threw everything I had into it. And that by itself gets you attention from someone who, and then you can get invited to go do A, B, C, or D. And then there was this election in 1992 that brought on some people named the Clintons.
I've heard of them. I have heard of them.
I thought you might have. And the way this works in government is I came into work one fine day sometime after the election, and I'm handed a note, as were all of my co-political appointees in the Bush administration, that said, Jeffrey, thank you so much for your government service. Be out by noon, January 20th.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Have a good day. Exactly. So January 20th arrives, the new president is sworn in, and I'm out of a job. And, I had to think, I'd done all of this political stuff, and my rise was, in retrospect, fairly rapid, which, you can't plan for. And I thought, well, now what do I want to do? And I decided I wanted to write and get in the media. So I took screenwriting courses at Georgetown. I've only written 2 screenplays, but the first one I wrote in class, and they said, send this to this place. And I didn't know what it was. Well, it turned out to be the Motion Picture Academy. And they had a fellowship program, and they got about 5,000 applications. I made the final 100, not the final 10. But the kicker was, I was up here visiting my parents, and I go back to Washington to my apartment, and there on my voice machine are all these messages from literary agents. So suddenly I'm getting all these calls. I got an agent out of it. I had an offhand thought, well, gee, maybe I should write an op-ed. I'll try an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal. Well, son of a gun, they published it. And the next thing I began to know, I was getting these invitations to write political columns for various newspapers. And I, of course, took it up. I wrote for the Patriot News in the beginning from time to time. I wrote for the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Then I'd branch out, the Los Angeles Times and papers all around the country. And then you start to get media attention. And I began to realize, now things are slowly shifting online and all of this kind of thing. And I remember the first time I got an invitation to be on Sean Hannity's show. And that was, quite the big deal at the time. And so I inadvertently had now a television career of sorts off and running. You move ahead to 2013, and my dad is gone, but I'm still taking care of my mom, living here. And I get this email from somebody that I didn't really know, but we had a mutual friend. And he said, the tagline was, Jeffrey, this is just BS. Why? What was this? I had no idea. Well, I looked, somebody at the American Spectator had seen Donald Trump on the Today Show with Matt Lauer. And Matt Lauer asked him if he was thinking of running for president in 2016. Now, mind you, this is June of 2013. Mm-hmm. And he says, yes, he's thinking it. So this annoyed this colleague of mine at the American Spectator. And he writes, can't we just ignore Donald Trump? So I get this thing, and it was somebody who at the time worked for Donald Trump. And I hadn't seen the article. I read it, and I thought, well, I'll answer this because I've read his books. I admire the guy's career. So I write a column, never ignore Donald Trump, and say all these good things. I never thought anything about this. About a handful of days later, a letter shows up at the American Spectator headquarters, which is in Washington, thanking me from Donald Trump. Well, that's nice, but I still didn't think anything of this.
Yeah, you didn't think there was any real chance or real opportunity there, I guess, long term.
I just wasn't I'm doing media stuff, right? So right. I didn't want to get back in a presidential campaign and all that kind of thing. But I wrote this up. So I'm sitting here on the Saturday before Labor Day of 2013, taking care of good old mom. She's sound asleep in the other room. The phone rings back here. I pick it up, and you know how you hear a voice and you think you know the voice and you can't place it? The voice on the other end says, Jeffrey? I said, yes, this is Donald Trump. I burst out laughing. It was my instant response. And I said, Donald, you didn't have to call. Well, he wanted to thank me. We talked and talked and talked. I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or so. He says, okay, you've got my number now. Let's stay in touch. Well, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to call Donald Trump. Well, a little bit later, unbeknownst to me, the American Spectator has a big fundraising dinner every fall. They haven't had one in the pandemic season, but generally it's fall in Washington. And it's, one of these typical Washington things where everybody's gussied up and about 500 people. And they had, unbeknownst to me, invited Donald Trump and also Ted Cruz to be co-speakers at this event, and both of them accepted. Well, then I get a phone call from his office. He wants me to fly down with him. Oh, geez. And I at first I was a little reluctant because, I'm taking care of my mother and all this stuff. And a cousin happened to call me. She lives in Binghamton, New York. She called me, and I said, just to check on my mom. And I said, well, Beth, you won't believe. I just got this call. She says, well, you're going to do it, aren't you? And I said, well, Mom, she says, I'm coming down there. I will take care of your mother. You go do this. So I hiked myself up at 4 a.m, drove to Washington to the hotel, the Marriott Hotel, then went to Union Station, took the train up to New York, walked up to Trump Tower. I was ushered up to his office immediately. He was looking over pictures of golf courses. He just opened a golf course in the Bronx, one of these typical Trump stories where the city of New York couldn't get it done.
Right. And
asked him to do it, and he got it done. And there he is with Jack Nicklaus and I don't know, Arnold, I forget who else, but all these people. Oh, plus Mayor Bloomberg, interestingly.
Yeah, right. Who saw that one coming 5 years later, 6 years later?
Right. So then when it's over, he's showing me around his office, which I must say is amazingly modest. I mean, you'd think it would be this huge expanse, and it's probably about twice the size of my small office in here, and that's it. The scenery is pretty good. He's on the 26th floor of the Trump Tower. But he says, okay, come on upstairs with me. I want to change my shirt for the flight. Up we go with a security guy. We come down, we get on we're going to get in the car and go to the airport, go to LaGuardia Airport. And there's two. When I first walked in the lobby, it's got all sorts of Trump-related stores, restaurants. So I looked around and I went over there. I saw that there was a tie counter selling men's ties, Trump ties. And I looked at them and I thought, yeah, Jeff, a little really nice, but a little expensive for you. So I didn't do it. So when we leave to go down, There's a parallel back lobby where the public doesn't go, and it's clearly for the people who have businesses and offices and residents in the building.
Sure.
So we're about to head out the door, and he says, "Oh, wait, come with me." We go into the public lobby. He is immediately swarmed by people, and my political brain is going, well, this is very interesting. They want selfies, they want autographs, all this. He takes me by the arm to the tie counter.
You're getting a tie.
And says, "Pick one." I said, no. He says, "Pick one." So I pick one. Then he says, "Okay, pick another." I said, no, pick another. So I pick another. And then he turns to the woman behind the counter. He says, "Okay, and give him this one, and give him this one over here. And oh yeah, give him one of those." And I thought, what is that? Well, what does that turn out to be? Success by Trump. It was men's cologne.
Oh my gosh. Well, lucky you.
Out the door we go. We get on the plane. We go to the airport. We get on the small plane, not the 757. He says he was always getting grief for people like Al Gore for flying the big 757. He said, aside from which my Learjet or whatever it was is faster. We'll be in Washington in 28 minutes, which we were.
Wow.
So we get there, and in we go. Ted Cruz is there. I am asked to introduce Donald, which I do, and then when the dinner's over, he says, "I'll call you." And the next day he calls, and then periodically we would talk on the phone. And he was thinking of running for governor of New York. I went up there. So the essence of it is that quite this relationship developed, and that is what gave rise to my presence on CNN.
Well, talk to me about how it felt to kind of be in that circle and in his inner circle and around him prior to him being president. Whether you support him or you don't, people watching this, what is it like to be in the air of a president, the most powerful man in the world, and kind of have one-on-one time with him? That's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I'd been prepped for this by working for President Reagan. I mean, and the difference was I was a young middle-level staff person for that. So when I was with him, and I did have time with him, it was carefully rationed out. It's not like I had walk-in privileges to the Oval Office. A meeting would be scheduled. I'd bring somebody in, like a congressional candidate, to see him. And the congressional candidate and his wife would go in with me, and would just be the four of us there in the Oval Office, and we would chat and all of this kind of thing.
Does that, pause real quick, does that hit you at one point, like, I'm in the freaking Oval Office? That's got to be pretty cool. What's that like?
Well, I'm
like?
quite the history buff. I mean, I just love this stuff. What you can't see here is in my office is I have rows and rows, whole bookcases from Washington to now Donald Trump, in order, I might add. Massive numbers of volumes, what's going on with Millard Fillmore and Chester Arthur, the accidental president. So I was acutely aware of where I was. And it is an amazing thing to see. And you look around and see the Resolute desk, as they call it, which was made from the timbers of the HMS Resolute and sent as a thanks for rescuing the ship by Queen Victoria to President Rutherford Hayes. And Franklin Roosevelt had the presidential seal carved into the middle of it, and the doors open up. And they did this for his, to hide his legs when he was in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. But in my lifetime, when President Kennedy was in the Oval Office, young JFK Jr., who was a child, would play peekaboo, and there were pictures of him opening the door, peeking his head through. So, I'm very well aware of all of this history, and it was really awesome. So,
what is Donald like one-on-one? I mean, everyone has their preconceived notions about him, whether you like him or don't. I know he's abrasive to some folks. What's he like just shooting the breeze, I guess, one-on-one?
I found him very easy to get along with, a great sense of humor, very candid. I mean, what you see with him in public to some degree is just the way he is in private. It's like Ronald Reagan. There's not two different public-private people here. It's the same guy. And I would suggest that's one reason why so many millions of people like him, and it's one reason why so many people can't stand him, because all of us are creatures of our geographic and cultural background. I remember when Jimmy Carter was nominated for president, the media was making much of the fact that he would drain swamps and catch catfish and all. This was a Southern Plains, Georgia thing to do. For JFK, it was Hyannisport. LBJ was his Texas ranch. And for Donald Trump, it's Queens.
And golf courses.
And golf courses. Right, right. But I mean, the whole Queens thing molded him. And he told me his father was in the construction business. And so the young Donald, and I mean the really young Donald as a boy, would hang out with the hard hats. He really identified with these folks. And I think that really turned out to be a much later in life political strength for him. Sometimes he'd see me at rallies and call me out and all this sort of thing.
I see the great Jeffrey Lord there. Is that Jeffrey Lord? You're going to drop Jeffrey?
Along with two colleagues from from the American Spectator, we were invited to spend about an hour with him in the Oval Office. And, there I was again, and taking it all in and looking at the same desk as Ronald Reagan, some of the same portraits, bust of Winston Churchill, portrait of Andrew Jackson that Reagan had. And we chatted for an hour or so. And then he took us back to he asked if I'd been there before, and I said, yes, sir, when I worked for President Reagan. He says, well, come back here with me. Now, I'd never been back here. And what that is it's a short hallway that ends in a little conference room, and lots of presidents hang out there. And in his case, the Resolute desk is mostly empty on top, but all of his stuff was spread out on these informal tables there. And there's a flat screen TV. He says Obama used to sit back there and watch basketball games. But because the Oval Office is so formal and all of this kind of thing, presidents like to retreat there for the privacy of it. And I certainly got it. And he took me in this little room that he uses to give out gifts. And across the room here, I have a big silver tray with the presidential seal and his signature on it, that he said I wanted to, because he knew I had taken care of my mother. He didn't realize she'd passed, but he said, I wanted to give this to you anyway for your mother.
Well, I love those one-on-one stories you have. The last thing I kind of want to talk to you about is describe what it's like being at the receiving end of backlash of any kind. You've had your fair share of controversy, whether it's on CNN or privately for an article, whatever it is. What is it like having the world's attention, or some people's attention, kind of like laser focused on this guy's crazy? What's that like?
If I hadn't been around this since I was a child, I might have had a different attitude to it. But, having worked my way up through the ranks, there's not a single political person that I work for who was not subject to immense criticism, some of it personal. I remember working for John Hines, Senator Hines, who was a lovely person. But man, he'd get raked over the coals because he was a Hines and he was rich, and he'd go to, someplace in Pennsylvania that was impoverished, and they'd pick at him because of his money and say all sorts of terrible things. This just comes with that's par for the course. So the television exposure really increased that a lot. And, you just have to put your big boy pants on and just keep going on, because a lot of this stuff evaporates in the ether. And I never, rule number one is never to let this get to you. And at this stage, I've got all these friends in media, Sean. Interestingly, I may be the only person who's friends with those Sean Hannity and Anderson Cooper.
That actually might be a superlative that you do have. That is an odd one. I like all my friends, whether they're famous or unknown, and no matter what they do. And, they're spread across life and all kinds of things that they do. And, you just learn to appreciate human life and life in America, and you stand up every day for what you believe in. And in my case, I'm fortunate to be able to sit here right at home. I do Newsmax TV, as I said, or I do Fox and my own podcast. I can just put stuff out there all the time. So it's great. That's awesome. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for taking some time to talk politics and history, and you certainly got a knack for all of it. Thank you so much for your time today. I'll let you get back to your busy life. I'm sure you got stuff to get off to.
Yeah, I got a deadline, so got to hit the button.
I love that, Jeffrey.
All right, Alex, thank you very much.
Of course, and thank you all for watching at home as well. Please like this video and subscribe below. We'll see you all next time.